All right, guys. So we want to talk about uh, the many-to-many relationships. Um, so can someone give me an example of a many-to-many relationship? So we talked about that briefly before. And right now I want to show you how you can do that in Postgres. And if we have time, I'll show you how we can do that in Django. So can someone give me an example of a many-to-many relationship? Luai, what do you think?
If we're talking conceptually, an example would be like if you had a someone who owned multiple houses. So you could say like the owner could be maybe like a parent, and then the houses would be like the child, and that would be like a one-to-many relationship because you can have like a person own multiple houses.
Okay. So that is assuming that only one person owns a house, that would be a one to many, not many to many. So, because if you say, it would be something that looks like this kind of one uh, owner, one person, let's say one person owns many houses, possibly, and one house is owned by one person. If that's the case, then it would be one to many. Because one owns many and one particular house is owned by one. That's very similar to kind of trail reviews, kind of student phone number, student emails. So that's not many to many. That's more like that is one to many. So I'm seeing some kind of examples here in the chat window. So one student saying customers to products. So consumer can buy many products and products can be bought by many customers. So typically, not so much. I mean, we have to kind of think about those for a few minutes. So typically a particular product, say right now we're talking about a particular product, is actually let's think of a particular product as maybe kind of a book, right? So a book, which is not a particular, let's not think of it as a particular book, let's think of it as a book title. So a book like, like maybe Outliers can be bought by many customers or consumers, and a consumer or a customer can buy many books. Sure, that's good, and that would be correct. That is actually, that's a good way of that's a correct relationship. Now, if I were to design a system that keeps track of, customers and products, I probably wouldn't save, kind of this transaction like this. I would probably say kind of a customer or a consumer bought or can buy a book that is probably kind of identified or defined by kind of the exact copy of the book. So I don't know how they do it actually in, when they sell books, but it's possible that, I don't know, maybe you can tell me, guys. I don't know if each book has a kind of an ID. Of course, books have ISBN, but those are not they're unique from book to book, but they're not unique from kind of copy to copy. But I wonder, I feel like if you were to go and buy something from kind of a store or online, your copy is going to have an ID. So your copy of the book is going to have a kind of a unique ID, and that's going to be what's associated with the customer. So it can be, you want to think about it. If you're thinking of it like this, then that would be actually many to many. That's correct. But if you're thinking of it as kind of an invoice, and each copy of a book has a particular kind of ID, then that ID wouldn't be shared. For example, you and I would not buy the same book, because each book has each copy of the book has a different ID. And in that case, it wouldn't be many to many. But if we would say, I buy a book like Outliers, and that's going to have a number, say 10, and you buy Outliers, then that's going to make it many to many, because I buy, kind of both of us buy the same book, and one of us can buy many books. So essentially, if I were to kind of put it in this similar format, one person, we can say owns or buys many books, and one book, again, the same book, because right now we're not thinking of it as a, let's say ISBN right now. One kind of book that is, again, not a copy, just a book, kind of a book title, can be bought or is bought by many, individuals, many persons. Okay. So in that case, then that's going to be a many to many. So the way we, again, if we think of it like this, which would map to this, and that would be many to many. But if we say, again, one person buys many book copies, and each book copy, or one book copy, is bought, or can be, let's just be consistent here, is bought by a single person, then that's going to be one to many. Because again, a single copy probably is bought by a single person. So I guess it depends whether we think of it as a book title or a book copy. Do you guys have any questions about this? So if we think of it like this, that's going to be many to many. And if we think of it like this, that's going to be one to many. Now for books and authors, that's going to be many to many. So that's kind of easier, because we're not really talking about transactions kind of in a store, and we don't really care how, when it comes to transactions, we have to be kind of more careful. We need to know how this is done, how the database is designed. But in a book author, this is kind of a many to many, because, let me just say many to many, because one author can write many books, and one book is written by many authors. This is kind of clear, more clear than the transactions of buying and selling books. So one author can publish or write many books, and one book can be written by many authors. Loa, you have a question?
I'm kind of still a tiny bit confused on the many to many. I don't know if you could give like another example, or just like a small specific one.
Yeah, let's think of other examples that are many to many. So I have to say one to many is way more common than many to many. So many to many is not very common. I don't have actually many to many relationships in my kind of the projects that I've worked with. So one kind of example of where I've used many to many was when I've built a system before. It was a kind of collaborative work for languages. So it shows you kind of the translation of a word or of a sentence from one language to another. And that is actually a many to many relationship, because the same word can have many translations. So for example, so I've had a table for English terms, something like that. I'm going to kind of make up some stuff here because I don't remember the details. But I had a table for English terms, and I had a table for Spanish terms, and I had a many-to-many relationship because one English term can have many kind of Spanish translations, and one Spanish term can have many English translations, right? So I hope that I don't have, I mean, I can think of examples now, but I don't think, I mean, I don't want to distract you with right now some examples. If that kind of makes sense, then we don't have to kind of show you examples. Lua, you have a question?
So you're saying the way it works is that it's each of when you say like a many to many, if there was like in this example, the English terms work separately from the Spanish terms, and the Spanish terms work separately from the English terms, if that makes sense.
Work separately. I'm not sure what you mean by work.
Work separately, like you don't necessarily connect the meaning of the two at the same time. So like you were saying, one English, like a word in English can have many Spanish translations, but then one word in Spanish can have like many words in English. And so we say it's many to many because there's on both ends, there's like many options when you have like one example being presented.
Yes, I mean, I think what you said is right. So if you think of, so many to many relationship is going to be, so there's always going to be two tables, okay? Now, of course, the decision to separate English terms from Spanish terms is something that we can discuss later. But typically we have two tables. Those could be English terms, Spanish terms. It could be authors' books. It can be, trail reviews. So there's always kind of two tables, and we need to know whether the relationship is one to many or many to many. Now, the actual relationship sometimes is not clear. So this kind of writing is not clear and maybe is not necessary. So we can kind of to think of it like this. One author can do something with many books. Of course, author writes books, and one book is something by many authors, and it's written. Of course, in this case, it's written. So if you think of an English Spanish, for example, one English term can something to many Spanish terms. Of course, the relationship in the here is going to be can be translated, because that's what we do in languages, right? And one Spanish term can or is sure by many English terms. So the question is, if I say this, would that be correct? Would that be, if I say one English term can be translated to many Spanish terms, and one Spanish term can be translated, in this case, it's actually, the relationship is kind of identical. Let me be consistent, can be translated to many. If that's correct, I mean, if those two statements are correct, then it's a many to many relationship. If that's what you want to design, I mean, of course, those two statements are correct. Now, whether you decide to develop your system like this or not is up to you. You might want to simplify your system, whether it's a website or whatever, whether it's an app or website, and you may want to say, I want just one translation I want just kind of a one-to-one. So one English term is going to have just one Spanish term translation, and that's fine. That's up to you. But in the system that I've built before, it wasn't like that, because it's not flexible to say one English term has only one Spanish translation. I mean, typically one English term can have many Spanish translations, and of course vice versa. So this is really the proper way of defining the relationship. Now, again, this, what goes here can be different because it really depends on what the relationship is. So here, again, one author can write. In this case, it'll be write. And one book is, let's say, let's also do can. Let's do kind of can write. And here, one book can be written or can be authored by many authors. So if that's true, then it's going to be a many-to-many relationship. So let's think of, for example, teachers and students. Let's kind of, again, do this. Let's copy this, paste this. One teacher can, of course, teach many students. That's clearly correct. And one student can be taught by many students, can be taught by many kind of teachers. That's, of course, is correct too. So that's going to be a many-to-many. Now, if you try to do something like a phone number, like a student phone number. So let's say student and phone number. And let's try to see if we can make this. And as you'll see, it's not going to work. So here I can say one student can have, I guess have is the verb that we can use, many phone numbers. That would be correct. One student can have many phone numbers. That actually is correct. But if you try to say one phone number can be owned, I suppose, by many students, that's going to be incorrect. That's not correct. I mean, one phone number typically belongs to one student. You can't have a phone number that belongs to many students. And because of that, you know that the relationship between student and phone number is not many-to-many because we weren't able to do that here. The correct relationship, of course, would be one phone number can be owned by one student, and that would make it one-to-many. Does that help a little bit? Alan, you have a question?
Yeah, so the many-to-many relationship, that just kind of seems like the product or item is like two items or whatever. It's like two one-to-many relationships in both directions. Is it bad to assume it that way?
The products and the kind of customers.
So like if you think about book to author, it's like the two to each other is like one-to-many in both directions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So books to authors, it's kind of one-to-many both directions. That's fine. Yep. That's okay. You can think of it like this. You can think of it as kind of one-to-many in both directions, just like one author can have many books and one book can have many authors. So if it's one-to-many in both directions, then it's many-to-many. Okay, I like that. And if it's one-to-many in one direction, which is like this, one student can have many, but one phone number can belong to one student. So it's going to be one-to-many. So that's good. That's a good way of thinking about it. Yeah. Do you guys have other questions about this?
I'm just gonna say, I think you cleared things up for me. It makes more sense.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad. All right. So let's see. So that's really, again, the many-to-many, and they're not super common. Many-to-many. One-to-many is way more common. So when you think of quizzes, questions, that's one-to-many. When you think of a student quizzes, that's going to be one-to-many. So one student will have kind of many quizzes, and one quiz will be, let's see, one student has many quizzes, sure, and one quiz is given to many students. So that's going to be many-to-many actually in this case. And it is many-to-many in actually the database that I have for the website, by the way. So I do have let's talk about the design and then we'll get back to this. So that's actually a good example, and I want to show you maybe how I have it in the database. But let's try with some, let's do something, let's kind of talk about something that's kind of more clear, and then we'll get back to that and I'll show you. But this is one-to-many, excuse me, many-to-many, because one quiz is given to many students. So that's actually many-to-many. Again, it's maybe not the best example to start with, but it is many-to-many. Let's start with something that I like, which is the book author. I feel the book authors is a good example. It's kind of more clear. Typically, when you have a many-to-many relationship, you have three tables. So this is something that you need to make sure that you understand. You actually have three tables, not two tables. So when you have one-to-many, you have two tables. One of them is going to have a primary key, and one of them is going to have foreign key. And they have a relationship which we can talk about also today. We've done that, by the way. If you revisit the videos where I talk about one-to-many, you will see exactly what the code, what the code we've written was for Postgres, and also the concept of kind of one-to-many. It's always two tables in one-to-many. But when you're talking about many-to-many, you actually have to have three tables. One table for let's do the book's authors. One table for the book, and one table for the author, and one other table that's called a bridge table. That's usually what it's referred to by. So a bridge table connects the two, and you do need a bridge table when you have a many-to-many. That's really how it is. Whenever you have many-to-many, you should have a bridge table. So let me show you how kind of that looks like, the bridge table. I'm gonna create three tables. I'm gonna create two first, the book and the author. So let's call this book, and let's call this author. Of course, we have an ID here. We have like a book title, maybe book ISBN, and maybe number of pages, right? Book, number of pages. We don't want to talk about authors yet. So again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Doesn't really matter what the books are. I don't want to spend too much time here. Let me center all of this. Okay. And same thing for author. Author is going to have an ID, probably author name. Obviously, that's important. Maybe author. I don't know we don't worry about the author ages. Maybe is alive, I guess. Sure, maybe that's kind of important. And maybe author nationality. I don't think that's nationality. Maybe that's important. Nationality. Maybe that's important for people that are studying authors. They want to kind of see if there's a pattern somewhere. So someone said published books. It's not bad. The problem with number of published books is that this has to kind of it has to be updated frequently. Kind of published, and I think yeah, that's going to be updated frequently, so that's going to cause some issues. Blake saying author gender, sure, or genre, author genre. Is that what you said? Is that you meant genre? Yeah, genre is not bad. I think many authors are actually, they write about different genres. I think I've been noticing this lately. Many authors, they're just good at writing, for many, in many genres. So maybe author genre, sure, that's not bad. These are good examples. I like that. We have a discussion like this. It's not a technical one, but I think it's good to, when you do databases, there's some art to it. You have to kind of think of those data points, and you have to decide whether those data points are worth saving, or maybe they're not. So some of them are derived. So some of them will depend on others. For example, having the date of birth and the age doesn't make sense. Having the age doesn't make a lot of sense because that needs to be updated. So date of birth is better, but how important is date of birth? So yeah, I mean, it's good to have a discussion about kind of those data points. I'm going to keep it simple, guys, and I'm going to just stop here. So I'm going to just say that, okay? Now, let's say a book has been authored by, let's say this book has been, I'm going to just give it book one. Let's say book one has been authored by these two authors. Let's say author one, and here we have author two, and we have author three and author four. So for you to kind of create this many-to-many relationship, you have to have another table. And this table actually is only three columns. One of them is ID, okay, again, because all tables have IDs. And the name of the table is usually something that looks like this, either author book or book author. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do book author because I started with book here. So we have kind of three columns usually. The ID is the primary key, we know that. And this one is going to be something that looks like this, author ID and book ID. This is typically almost always, that's how it looks like. Now, in some cases, we actually add more kind of columns, but it's very rare. For example, we might add a column of kind of when was this added to the database. This is kind of a typical column that we add. But again, in most cases, we actually have it like this, just as simple as that. And again, let's say book one is authored by author one and author two. So what we would do, of course, here, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be always like that, right? Let's say 5, 6. So if you want to create this relationship where you say book one has been authored by author one and author two, you say author ID is going to be 1. That's for author one. Author ID 2, that's going to be for author 2. And the book ID is 1, book ID is 1. So those two rows tell us that this book, which has book ID 1, which has the title book 1, has been authored by two folks, author 1 and author 2, right? Author 1 and author 2. And that's how you create your relationship. It has to be like this. You can think about it more home and see if that kind of makes sense or not to you, and maybe you can come up with questions next week. But whenever you have many-to-many relationships, there has to be a bridge table that looks like this. That's how it's done, and that's how it should be done. So again, let's say, for example, book two was, let's assume that it was authored by only one author, which is author 3. That's fine. You can say author 3 authored book 2, and that's fine. It's fine. It doesn't have to be kind of many-to-many for each instance. When we when we do this, we can say can. So can is important here. Can have many phone numbers, can be owned. It doesn't have to, one student doesn't have to have many phone numbers. Not every students have to have many phone numbers. But if there's few, or at least one student that has many phone numbers, then it would be then can would be, we can say can, right? We can say one student can have many phone numbers. So in this case, for example, for book two was authored by a single person. So that's it. It would have kind of one row here. Let's say book 3 has been authored by, say, author 1 and author 4. That's fine. We can say author 1 goes to book 3 and author 4 goes to book 3. Like that. That's fine. I can even kind of create a border here to know what we're referring to. Okay, so each kind of section is gonna refer to, where's the color here? Kind of a one book in this case. Do you guys have any questions about this? All right. So it doesn't seem that you have questions. I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to start again. And we're going to code that in Postgres. I'll show you how you can code this in Postgres, and we can put some values in the tables. Let me stop the recording.